Thank you all for coming into the LA Times studio at Toronto. We're really lucky to have you. Sean, I want to start with you. So you have made what may be the first boxing horror movie, in my estimation.
Boom, drop the mic.
So I guess tell me about why you wanted to take on this particular aspect of the sport.
Well, I think it had been done before, and it's been done so well. It's like, what more can you say in that space? And I think this was a really original way into a boxing movie. Like you say, it's not been done before, and it's a different way of showing the audience a different side of the boxing genre. And that when I read it, that's what appealed to me immediately.
Were any of you sort of knowledgeable about boxing going in? I mean, the thing that struck me about it is that this is a movie where the training montage that would be any other boxing movie in 2 minutes in the first act is the whole movie. And I thought that was so compelling.
I knew about making the weight, but not about the extremities that the script explores. But it does have, weight divisions. And it's one of the only sports that does. And lots of fighters have, thinned down and then they balloon right up afterwards. And so it's that dichotomy. So I once again, I thought it was quite original too, and unlike anything I had ever seen before. And I'm quite a boxing fan. So
Orlando, what was your training regimen like to prepare for this role? And I'd be curious if you could talk a little bit about how your own body changed, because so much of the film is about how the character's body has to change at all costs.
I worked with this great nutritionist to begin with, and he sort of had me on this strict regime, tapering down food intake, actually surprisingly eating more frequently than I thought and often. I was doing about an hour of cardio, built up to about an hour and a half to 2 hours in the morning and at night with boxing training and weights and stuff. And then as I started to drop the weight, it was about maintaining holding the muscle, because I needed to look like a boxer, right? So I needed to hold the muscle that I had. So that was why there was a really strict kind of science to what I was eating. And I never ate so much tuna and cucumbers. I mean, it was a lot. And by the end, that's all I was eating, and for about 3 weeks. And I think the thing that was surprising actually was not so much just the physical transformation that starts to happen, and you see it and you feel it. And I was like, oh wow, I really like how I feel at about 165 pounds. This is nice. But it's the mental that was really, because when you start to deprive your body of the carbohydrates and the calories, you're really not sleeping great, and then which fortunately for boxer that was a sort of a surprising added bonus in a way to what it led to for me to kind of find into the character. I kind of feel like I lived a lot of what boxer was doing, and I have videos of me in like the Epsom salt baths and stuff prior to coming to set, so I kind of had a sense of what it was, and that gave me a kind of like insight. But I was just YouTubing videos with UFC fighters, boxers. There's some crazy cuts and that people have done, and I think the movie is an interesting comment on the psychology and the psyche of a character, of a man, of an athlete, woman, man, who will put themselves through that to get to that place. So that was pretty fascinating for the script.
There's been a conversation happening sort of online and among film fans about sort of foregrounding body image expectations for male stars. They've always been very strict for female stars, but there's been a bigger conversation about it recently. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how, if at all, it's changed since you sort of first came on the scene as an actor.
I think everything's changed with the way that we are now, living in a technology, a world of social media, and the way that we see ourselves, through our phones and through, the feed of whatever we may or not be watching. I think the discipline not to do that is the greatest thing, but is the hardest challenge in some ways. But I think that's had the greatest impact on the industry. And I think now it's like, I was very aware that there is a heightened look at the way, this is a comment on a male, on body dysmorphia, on eating, on shame, on the trauma of how his relationship to his mother is impacted, and his history, which we see played out, has impacted his psyche, and therefore, you know, I think it explains part of why he is capable of doing what he ultimately does to get there. It's interesting from that perspective, because it's like, what are we capable of to try and fit the mold, you know? And yeah, I mean, I'm in the industry, I get it. It's like, you know.
Katrina and John, your relationship in the film is, I think, you know, one of the most electric, because it becomes so pugilistic. I'm wondering kind of like what you all did to sort of, you know, prepare to like reach those heights of intensity in the scenes where you're at each other's throats. And Katrina, for you in particular, I'm wondering if you just talk about like how you understood Caitlin's evolution of like at first seeming kind of excited about the prospect, although skeptical of it, to like really kind of feeling completely out of the loop in this kind of madness.
For Caitlin, you know, I think she is somebody who has a very complicated past too. And so where we meet her at is that she's had some kind of processing of her trauma, of her past, but she's still a work in progress. And her skepticism at the beginning is because she sees that this is kind of it's such a long shot, it's such an impossibility, but she knows how much it means to him. And so she goes along for the ride, and like, I think she wants to believe that there's hope. She wants to believe that this is possible, because she sees all of that potential in this person, and she sees him in the best light. But when they're sort of at that point where she's, you know, that scene in the bedroom is so pivotal, because she's like, this is impossible. Like, it's not going to work. We have to go home. And it's that kind of shift when he opens up about how much it means. She compromises his safety, her integrity, in a way, because she brings Boz in, and it's actually her that makes that step, you know, which is such a, it's you know, that's the kind of decision you make when you're blind to love. Like, she wants this so much for him. But in terms of then what our relationship with John, I mean, it's amazing. Our first day working together was the scene where we're like in each other's faces.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it's just like you get a chance to work with John, which is like such an honor, and you get a chance to go toe to toe. It's like just fun in a way, but it was all there. And you know, Sean and Orlando, like we were shooting in a room sort of this size, and the way Sean shoots, you know, he's got his film camera strapped to him. How many pounds is it? It's like
a child.
You know, so he's shooting it and he's directing, and so it's very intimate, and it's very organic, and it just felt like there was such space. Even though we were shooting at such a fast pace, there was just such space for finding things really organically in the moment.
You know, you're responding off of your partner. You know, what Caitlin does, it creates your performance. What Orlando does creates your performance, and you try to give that back to them, and you go back and you build with that. I think when people, sometimes there's a kind of relaxation, and you know, it's not competitive, that you're actually working together, that's when really interesting things occur, that you're not working for yourself. And I think that's the joy of doing it, that you're actually trying to help each other, even if you're out, you know, you're antagonists or whatever. So they're all sort of have a lot to lose, and no one's at the top of their game in the film. I was fascinated what you said about body image, because if you look at fighters over the years, they have flat bodies. They had dancer bodies. They were all long muscled. There was no one pumped up. And it wasn't until like steroids came in the movies, even in the first Rocky, he's really kind of chunky, you know? So that's kind of changed. But the interesting thing in movies is that people look like they're more in shape, but people used to move more because the camera was bigger. And they also came from dance, acrobats, there were boxers, there were all different kinds of stage actors. And if you think about, you know, actors from the 30s, 40s, they all had interesting walks. and interesting physicalities. And that really hasn't been topped, even though people look maybe more sculpted because the cameras are smaller now, you know? But I mean, if you compare someone like Burt Lancaster, for example, who was an acrobat, he's incredible to watch him walk across a room, or Barbara Stanwyck. You watch them and you're like, wow. That's an interesting thing that you brought up about how bodies have, because they were aware of their bodies too, but it was different. But it was diet
and they were very fit, but they were fit as in the sense of the body as an instrument for acting.
That's right.
As opposed to
just being
looking good
Hercules.
on Instagram.
That's how I was trained at drama school. At drama school, we weren't allowed to go.
I think the pressure in the industry is, it superseded the need for using your body as an instrument, you know? And it's
That's
like,
right.
and I think, you know, I've seen it in just my duration in the industry as well. It's like you've seen how the pressure is more on guys, like they have to have that, you know, and everyone has to take their shirt off and it has to look a certain way. And I think it's
Six-pack.
It's you're relieved when you see a regular body.
Yeah.
You see
so
it, you go,
rare
oh my
that you do.
God.
I see one every morning in the mirror.
Yeah.
One line in the film that really struck me was Orlando, when your character says, "The older I get, the hungrier I get," and it sort of occurred to me that, you know, so much of our lives is motivation from failure, disappointment, even sort of insults from others. And I'm wondering if any of you ever if you have a moment in your career where something didn't work out, that it actually kind of ended up either opening the right door instead or motivated you for like a big moment later down the line.
You're hungry at a certain age for like what you think, and then the reality comes in. But you couldn't be hungry as you get older for something that's more profound and that means something more to you because your time is more limited.
Yeah,
I mean,
can't top that. We'll leave that right there.